Well, hello everybody, and welcome back to Only Leeds Bros. It is the week Leeds United do return eventually after the international break. But I'm pleased to say we're joined by Heidi from Follow Me, and LUFC has given up our time to speak to us today, all things Leeds United. Heidi, how are you? Thanks very much for joining us.
I'm all right, thank you.
Brilliant, it's good to hear. And we'll pop across, we check out how the brother is. Dylan, how are you?
I'm alive. I'm kicking. I'm well. That's all that
Good.
matters now. Hopefully now Leeds get 3 points on Saturday. Myself and Darren will be there. Looking forward for that one. So yeah, buzzing. Absolutely buzzing. Heidi, it's a privilege and an honour to speak to you tonight. If I'm being honest
Thanks.
with you.
Really is great to have you on. We'll crack on and we'll get straight into it. So I want to bring you back to the very start of Leeds United, your time supporting Leeds United. How did that kind of become about, your earliest memory of supporting Leeds? And then what was kind of the real big hook that you knew you were Leeds and this was something you're passionate you're going to have for the rest of your life?
My first sort of time of following Leeds was the 1965 FA Cup final against Liverpool. Back in the day, the FA Cup final was a real big thing on the television. It was all day sort of thing, the build up to the game. And obviously, Leeds were our local team. Even though I lived 30 miles away from Leeds, it was our local team really, and that's sort of what started me following them. Now the following year was the World Cup. Now my parents were both German, and they started going to all the Germany games here in England. The only one they didn't go to was the final, so that sort of got a bit more of the wetted the buds, so to
Oh,
speak. Because Jack Charlton was obviously in the England team, and I was sort of torn between supporting Germany for my parents and Jack Charlton for Leeds United. When I went to senior school, it was Selby High School for girls at that time, and that's where I met my best friend Sue. And her dad took me to my first game in 1967 for her 12th birthday. Now, I can't remember who we played. I haven't got a clue. I just know we were on Lowfields Terraces at the bottom. It was a beautiful day. At half time, they read our names out over the tannoy saying Sue, Heidi, and Fiona had come from Selby to support Leeds United, and they played Lily the Pink by the Scaffold, but I can't remember anything about the game, who we played, what the score was, anything like that. I haven't got a clue, but that was sort of my earliest memory of going to Leeds. Then I went to sporadic games between then and leaving school in 1971. And then me and Sue, we made a pact there to see how many games we could go to without missing one. Now, I was working at that point, but Sue was still at school. So I ended up going 7 years without missing a game, home and away, and went abroad to see Leeds. The only one I missed was Weep Estosia in the European Cup, just purely because it was 2 weeks after we'd been to Zurich and I couldn't get the money together quick enough. And, that sort of started the love affair with Leeds, because once you made that decision not to miss a game, it's like a drug got you, because you couldn't miss that game. You had to be there. And I've always been one that I prefer to be there in person. And it's a lot better seeing it for myself than seeing it off the television.
that's brilliant. Yeah, just amazing. I could listen to you all night,
Yeah.
Heidi. That's absolutely brilliant. And then around that time, and you're one of the lucky ones that got to see that Revie team and that brilliant Leeds United. So what was it like around then supporting Leeds and kind of the whole love and the togetherness around the city of Leeds?
It was brilliant, really, because at that time, it was very, very rare for Leeds to drop a point. So, we just took it for granted that we'd win games. We saw some fantastic football, some fantastic skill. And regardless of the dirty Leeds tag that came from the London newspapers, we were no dirtier than other teams of the era. You'd got your Tommy Smith of Liverpool and your Ron Harris at Chelsea, just as hard, because that's what it was. It was a man's game, and you got stuck in. And if somebody got stuck into you, Leeds gave it back as well. So it was just how football was back in them days. But it was, there were none of this play acting and rolling about on the floor. Everybody would just get on with it. And you did see some fantastic football. And, I think I was privileged to be there to see the best team ever under Don Revie. I mean, I was there for the demolition of Southampton 7-0, and the week before when we played that team from over the Pennines and hammered them as well. It was just great to be there. I know when we lost to Bristol City in the replay at ellandroad, I mean, I did sit down on the terraces and cry, and somebody told me not to be so stupid, but it was unheard of for Leeds to drop a point, really. So as you know, over the years, it's something we had to get used to very, very much. But back in that day, it was just a fantastic time to support our team. We managed to make a great group of friends who were travelling home and away to see Leeds, and we've stayed friends to this day. And that's what it's all about, that camaraderie and the love of following your team, and that's that unique bond that we all have.
So good to hear. It is. It's
Yeah.
togetherness, isn't it? It is, and it's like what you say with being Leeds, the camaraderie, and it does kind of feel like at times being Leeds, it's like a tribalism, isn't it? It feels like it's us against the world, and when you meet a Leeds fan, it's just you're instantly you're just bonded, aren't you? Because about you, well, in my opinion, support the greatest club in the world. But around that time, Heidi, it was obviously a massive stigma about women going to football games. What was it like kind of back then around, the 70s, 80s? Because obviously there was a lot of hooliganism around football at the time as well. I remember speaking to Mick as well, who was an Irish Leeds supporter for 60 years as well. And he moved over to Leeds at that time as well. And he spoke about that he'd only ever bring his wife to home games and never to away games. So what was it like around that time? And then how did it kind of transition to today? And what do you feel, what you're kind of feeling on today about women and their kind of role in football? Is it kind of starting to leave our society eventually?
Back then, I mean, to be honest, I never even gave a thought of us being a woman at football games until you sort of went to the games regularly and you heard it and saw it for yourself, basically. As you say, the trouble on the terraces back then was horrendous. You took your life in your own hands just to follow your team, and whilst it was bad for us, I think it was worse for the lads because they got the kick in. I just got beaten up at Doncaster Rovers in a friendly by 8 girls in a friendly, lovely. But that
Jesus.
was a pre-season game. But yeah, they thought I looked hard because I'd got my white dungarees on, and my friend had given me some monkey boots, and I just wore them because I liked them. Not a case of being hard, but somebody had tried threatening a friend who'd never been to a football game before, so I just told them to leave her alone, and that would it. They all piled into me. But going back to women in football itself, it was bad because nobody thought you were going to football to follow your team. You were just going for a lad. You were looking for a lad. You were looking to maybe go and have sex somewhere in the ground and things like that. And that was nothing like that was in our minds. We just wanted to follow our team. But you got called all the names under the sun. You had to put up with bum nipping, wandering hands, and some of the names were really bad. But it was the intimidation we got that was very, very bad. But many a time I'd go home from a game, I'd cry, sleep on it, and then next day I'd just carry on. And I wrote my first book, Follow Me in Leeds United, which is based on a diary I kept in the 70s when obviously I didn't miss those games. And everything in it is true. So it's warts and all. And somebody said to me, but why did you carry on going? And I said, because I wanted to follow my team, and I decided nobody was going to stop me doing something I loved. And that's what I did. And then in the 80s, I'd had my first 2 children back then when I started going back to home and away games, when I started running the Selby branch of the Leeds United Supporters Club. And it was different then because I think they saw you different because you've got children. But it was a different era then anyway. The trouble was still very bad, but we started getting police escorts at away games. So to me, that was perfect because it meant I didn't get any trouble coming specifically to me, and I actually preferred that. And I always knew that the lads basically they'd keep the trouble away from me, and that's the way I looked at it. It was, and they didn't always start anything. If somebody started it, they weren't just going to stand there and take it. They started fighting back, and that's what had happened in the 70s. They took a battering, and then eventually all these little lads all grew up together, and that's when they says, right, we're not taking this anymore, and that's when they started fighting back. But we got the reputation for it. Yes, some of it was warranted, but a lot of it wasn't. But, we were no different to a lot of other fans. And like I say, going to places like Main Road and Ayresome Park, they were just horrendous to go to as a Leeds fan. So there's plenty of stories for anybody where, for trouble at games. But I think the thing is, the more after I got beat up, I got scared very, very much going to away games. But the best thing is I'd shake like a leaf all day until I got back. But it didn't stop me going because I wanted to follow my team. But, you know, that fear didn't leave me because it only takes something to happen near you now. And I'd straight away start with the shaking. But that's
Yeah.
just purely because you know what can happen, I think, more than anything.
It's amazing commitment as well,
That's
especially
amazing.
like what you said, you're almost nearly taking your life in hands to go follow your football team. So it's unbelievable commitment to hear that, Heidi. And how do you feel like then today? Is it eventually starting to leave our game today? Because obviously there still does seem to be at times you still see a bit of a stigma around the women's game, but it does eventually seem to be starting to leave our society. Do you feel that?
I think I think society as a whole has started going backwards. I've said a long time ago that we were going back to the 70s with the way things are countrywide, nationwide, you know, worldwide. It just feels like we're going back in time and not for the better. Um, to be honest, I mean, I seem to be I seem to have got a good reputation with a lot of our fans. You know,
Yeah.
I don't know what it is with opposition fans because you don't really, I just really concentrate on Leeds. But I think I learned a long time ago that I wanted to treat people how I wanted to be treated. And that's how I go about it. I won't slag people off because they've got a difference of opinion. I realise nobody will ever have the same opinion. You'll all be entitled to your own opinion. And I think that's how I've always done it. But I've seen a lot on social media, if people attack, basically they get it back in droves. And it you know, so it's you've got to be mindful of how you speak to people, really. And like I say, I want to treat people how I want to be treated. So it's not a bad thing.
Nah, brilliant. That's great to hear. We'll get back onto the football then, Heidi. So obviously around that Revie team, the 1972 Cup final. What was that like? Leeds United is kind of forced. Obviously, the FA Cup was renowned, probably one of the biggest trophies in football at that time. What was it like for Leeds United to get the hands on it? And
Oh,
personally yourself, how did you feel?
that that's my favourite ever game. That was my first time visiting Wembley. Walking down Wembley Way, seeing the Twin Towers and getting into the ground. It was just a fantastic feeling. And we were behind the tunnel. I've only got one photo from there, which has my friend's mum and dad on, and a brother, and us two with my little flag. And we went down on our local bus company, Abbey Coachways, went down to Wembley on there, got there in plenty time, and you just enjoyed the build up inside the ground. Before the game, you had Tommy Steele come out, who led the community singing. He came out wearing white, so oh, he's supporting Leeds. That's great. And then, you know, Her Majesty the Queen was there, so it was a big occasion. And hearing the whole crowd of that whole 100,000 crowd singing "Abide with Me" and the national anthem, it was awesome, and it's something that's like, it's lived with me till this day, and it was just a fantastic experience. And then the game itself, you know, I think that game I thought, sorry, I'm hoping I don't wobble this.
No, no, you're right.
It, it's a case of I thought we're going to win this cup today. I didn't have any qualms that we weren't going to win it, but you know, and obviously when Alan Clark scored, we were dancing and crying on the terraces and jumping around, and it was just a fantastic feeling. And then when the final whistle blew and you knew you'd won the cup, well, it was such a euphoric moment. But the only downside was Mick Jones getting injured,
Jones, yeah.
and that was the downside of it. But seeing Billy, who's my hero, he always will be, going up and getting the FA Cup from Her Majesty the Queen, well, you know, it was just magical. And it's just something that unless you've experienced it, you can't sort of describe
You
it
can't
to other
describe it.
people. But this is why the FA Cup means so much to me now, and the fact that it's been disregarded by so many
Yeah,
clubs, and we have, it really hurts because I just think we should battle for everything like we used to do back in the day. And you know, never mind you want promotion and everything else, you should never ever throw the towel in, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you. And even my time when I kind of started, the FA Cup was still kind of a big thing around the time, and you can kind of see it's gone very much like the League Cup now, isn't it? It's very much kind of one of them. It's a chance to, see your fringe players or see the youth coming through. So I 100% agree with you. We definitely need to bring back the magic of the FA Cup, 100%, Heidi. And then that was obviously Leeds United's most successful period under manager Don Revie, a brilliant Leeds United team. And then Revie left. He took the England job. And that kind of brings on to Leeds United, next biggest thing in our history that we still sing about today, the 1975 European Cup final. What was your thoughts around that whole debacle?
Well, I went to Zurich, Anderlecht, Barcelona, and Paris, and just starting on that journey, knowing you're off to the European Cup final in the end, was something I thought, oh, we can do this. I mean, this was after getting rid of that bit that I hated, which was Clough coming in. We should
Yeah.
never, ever have appointed him. I hated him from the word go. And we should have had Johnny Giles, as far as I'm concerned,
Yeah.
and appointed from within, because Liverpool were appointed from within and they carried on. We didn't. But once Jimmy, well, we were in Zurich and we were at the players' entrance and we heard that they'd sacked Clough. So we were dancing around outside there. Fantastic. He's gone, he's gone, he's gone. And at the end of the game, the players came out, and I think Manny Cousins came out as well. So we chased after him, and me and Sue was just says, "Can we be manager, please?" And he said, "Of course you can, girls." So I said, "Yes, that's it." Got back to England next day, got back to Leeds, and we heard they'd appointed Jimmy Armfield, but he was really, really good with us personally. I think just because we ended up cleaning a lot of graffiti off around the ground that that team across the Pennines had put around the ground, and there's no way we were leaving that around Ellandroad. So we went and cleaned it all off for him, and he said if all fans were like us, there'd be no problem. So we always had a good reputation with Jimmy Armfield. But going to Zurich, and then we went to Anderlecht. We went on the coach from Harrogate, and we had a really good week. Went straight to Luton afterwards, and then we found out we were going to Barcelona, and that's sort of when the reality started hitting. After we went to the first leg and we had that fantastic win at ellandroad, and then obviously we're over in Barcelona for that second semi-final leg, and that was very, very nerve-wracking. Little pockets of fighting was breaking out, because if any Leeds fans cheered, they were getting cracked overhead by Spaniards. So we got very, very scared as well. We were in the bottom tier behind the goal. There were some pockets of Leeds to the right of us, some to the left. But we just got that. We were so nervous after Gordon McQueen got sent off that we thought we can't watch this game. So we sat there with his backs to it, but realised, kept looking round and looking round like you do. But when that final whistle blew, knowing you'd got to European Cup final, it was just fantastic. That was a real moment. But we were so scared of what was going to happen to us then. We thought we were going to get lynched. So we didn't hang about the ground, which we should have hung a bit longer around there, because I think we missed out on some of the celebrations, but we were just so scared. But that's when we heard as well there was only going to be 8,000 tickets for the final, but it was my 69th game, and I thought, there's no way I won't get a ticket. But then it turned out that everybody else, all my friends got one, and I didn't get one. And it were a case, I got a letter from Leeds saying, "Oh, you'll be pleased to know it's live on the television." I don't care if it's
good to
live on
you.
telly. I'm going with or without a ticket. But then my friend Carol, she had a season ticket in the West Stand as well. So she ended up with 2 extra tickets. So I got one, and a friend Dave Howell got one as well. And through her generosity, my mum come running down Mill Lane to tell me that I'd got a ticket for the final. And it was just fantastic then, because all you could see on the telly were people who you'd never seen before. "I haven't got a ticket, I haven't got a ticket." And I thought, but I've been to 69 games, so I should have a ticket.
Yeah.
And I was glad I got one in the end. But then we decided, because we'd been to Barcelona with the team, the club trip. So we decided to go to Paris as well with it, and it was because of that we ended up with another ticket. So I ended up with 2 tickets for the final, but we've sold them at face value to some Leeds fans we knew outside the ground. So I've never ripped my fans off. That's never do
Yeah,
things like that. And we always look after everybody. But yeah, that whole we didn't get there till late though, so I regret that part because I felt we missed up on a lot of the build up. And if I just felt if we'd have gone with the Murgatroyds again from Harrogate, that would have won the final, because flying from East Midlands Airport, I did that to Salonika and I did it to Paris, and we lost them both. So I'd never ever do that again.
the
Not if
jinx.
we ever get there again. But yeah, it was just up until Peter Lorimer scoring. It had been the most magical night. The crowd was just absolute fantastic. And when that ball hit the back of the net, I automatically looked at the linesman to the right of me. I looked at the referee, and both of them signalled a goal. So everybody's going absolutely nuts. And then all of a sudden you see Beckenbauer go up to talk to the referee. And the next thing, it goes over to the linesman and it disallows that goal. And I think after knowing we'd been robbed in Salonika by a bribed referee, I think it was just too much for some to take. I honestly wished nothing had kicked off just then, but I think somebody went onto the pitch, but then the riot police or these security guards started beating hell out of them, and that was the signal then for them to try and get them off them, really. But I just wished we'd not done anything at that point and just tried to get behind the team, because I think that really was the final straw for when we should have had a penalty at first half as well.
Yeah.
So again, it's that you're seeing you're being robbed, and I think that's the thing that a lot couldn't take. It happened again and again, and
I
knowing
see.
that's the bit that hurts, and I'll never forgive and forget being cheated out of what our rightful trophy, as far as I'm
Players.
concerned.
Yeah.
And
I look
I'll
back, I
never
see a
forgive
lot.
it now.
My dad speaks about that as well a lot, and I've looked back and seen a lot of the footage and how he ever got away with it even after the game. It's just absolutely crazy, and obviously it did. Then it came out years later. The referee did admit he was bribed. So rightfully, we still do sing the champions of Europe, even though there isn't a European trophy. In the cabinet, but hopefully one day we will get our hands on it. You said not anytime soon, but hopefully one day there will be a European Cup in ellandroad to be proud of. And then after that, then it changed. After then, Heidi, then we seen the decline of Leeds United through the 80s and 90s, trying to kind of fell down the divisions. What was that kind of like then to you after supporting this team that was the best team on the land, was feared by everyone? What was that then transition like to see this team just faltering and almost falling away? How hurt were you around that?
But the thing is, I always used to think, what will happen when Billy and everybody left the team? Would we still support Leeds? Well, 60 years later, we're still here, because once you supported them back then, it's in your blood, and it's the people as well. It's that camaraderie that kept everybody going. Even how badly it was on the pitch when we got relegated. Then I started going back to sporadic away games, because I stopped at the end of the 70s, and started going back to sporadic ones after I'd had my first 2 children. And then once I ran the Selby branch, I just went everywhere. And it started building up with when we got to the playoffs against Charlton, and also the semi-finals against Coventry. That was really a good time. Everybody would really get behind the team. The fans were just brilliant back then, because if ever an opposition player scored a goal, we'd be straight up there supporting them and getting behind them. And that is the thing that really hurts now, that we don't have that to what we did, because we had a fantastic atmosphere back then. And doing Mexican waves around ellandroad. It was just it was really good back then. And Coventry was great till half time again, and then that went downhill after that. And and I'm thinking, if only Brendan Ormsby had kicked that ball across the line instead of trying to shield it, But it's like anything else. You can't change what's happened. Even at St Andrews, when Sheridan scored, but Shirtliff scored 2 goals, and he should have already been off the pitch, but obviously stayed on, scored 2 goals to win. and it's things like that that went against you. But then we did have some good times back then. Again, fans were coming left, right, and centre. I think I took 3 buses to Hillsborough to the semi-final, and things like that. Whereas, well, and that's it. I did run the supporters club for 7 years, but I gave up in the end because my baby daughter died and I couldn't look after the lads as well as myself. And it were
So
a
sorry
case,
to
I
hear that.
lasted a year after, but I just says, no, I says, I can't look after anybody
Yeah,
else.
you need to look
But
after
it,
yourself first. Yeah,
but it showed really how much I did, because 18 months later, somebody took it over from me, but then it all folded. They joined the York branch and then it all
that was that.
fell together. But, we've got some real stalwarts of the supporters club still going to this day. Like you've got your Mick Hewitt from South Kirkby, Keith Gaunt at Fullerton Park, and many more, Phil Beaton and things like that with Griffin. So we've got a fantastic network of supporters club coaches and things, because what they do is they've always been getting fans to games, and that's something they've always done. And because back in the day in the 70s, it got to the stage, because everywhere you went you'd have coach windows put through, you'd come back with no windows in, and then eventually the coach company says, right, we're not taking them anymore. At one point they'd take you to London but only take you to King Cross Station. You'd to make your own way to the grounds. So it was quite bad on that score. And then because of that, you used to go on the football specials, but then they used to all wait for you, and then again there was always trouble that way. So we started trying to go on the service train, and then the police were trying to make us go on the specials, and we didn't want to go on the specials. And that's when my friend Carol wrote to the Daily Express, that's where the front cover of my Follow Me Leeds United book comes from. It was taken by the Daily Express outside the West Stand. And basically, because, why should we suffer, really? That was, we're made out to be hooligans and treated like third-class citizens, as Carol said, because we were female and went to football. And, eventually we did get us way to make our own way there, because we were trying to avoid the trouble. But,
Yeah,
they're trying to make you go into the trouble, which we didn't want. But then eventually, when the train stopped running, that's when the supporters club started putting on the coaches to take fans to games, and that's where it's carried on ever since. And so, they do a good job of getting us to games. That's all I can
yeah.
say. And without them, I can just get on a coach and it'll take me where I need to go these days. I don't have to think anything about it, so it makes life a lot easier.
A lot easier than it used to be. It's brilliant, unbelievable commitment from you, Heidi. Let's skip on then a little bit. So obviously the 80s and 90s, not great for Leeds United, but we eventually started to work our way back, and it kind of bring us in then to the early 2000s. First of all, kind of under George Graham, he kind of moved on, and then David O'Leary took over. What was kind of your feeling around that Leeds team at that time? Because we obviously won the Youth Cup. You had your Alan Smiths, Lee Bowlers, Harry Kewell, a good Irish influx as well. You had your Gary Kelly, Ian Hart. What was that like again? Was that kind of the Phoenix kind of rising from the ashes, and Leeds United were on their way back?
Yeah, absolutely. Because the way I looked at it, you'd got some of the old heads in there, but you were bringing all your youngsters through, like they did back in the day with Don Revie, where you had people like Bobby Collins there helping to bring the younger generation through. Because when you think about it, look at Billy Bremner and Eddie Gray and Peter Lorimer, all young ages that they started. And so it was great to see the youngsters coming back through again. And I think the biggest mistake that O'Leary made was getting rid of Eddie Gray as his coach and bringing
Yeah.
Brian Kidden. I mean, that was absolute sacrilege as far as I'm concerned. And that was sort of a bad thing. It was quite nice at that time as well, though, because we told, I sent a letter to Rich Dale saying, please don't price us out of it. And he brought in the family stand and everything else. And it was a really good time as a family club. They really encouraged families to come with the kids and everything else. And it was a really good time to follow Leeds. Everybody seemed to like Leeds as a second team, which was unheard of. But it was really special following Leeds again in those times. At the time, we couldn't go to every European game like some of the other ones did. I mean, my husband and me used to take it in turns to go, and the one that I should have been going to was Galatasaray, but I was too scared to go. Because of all the trouble that had happened, and some local fans, that team across the Pennines, some local fans from Halifax had been a few weeks prior, and they'd told us about all this trouble that had happened. So of course, my anxiousness took over, and I says, "I'm not going. I'm too scared." And then obviously our worst fears came true with the murders of Chris and Kevin, and I mean that was just an horrendous time for Leeds United, and it's to say it's the 25th anniversary of it. I just don't know where that time's gone. But I'm going to Ellandroad on the 4th of April, which is actually the anniversary of my daughter's death, as well as going to the anniversary of this. So it'll be quite poignant that night. But I have to go there to pay my respects to him.
Yeah, and it's so good, Hoodie. Myself and Dylan, we're travelling over to the Swansea game, and Leeds United have announced that that's going to be the fixture where they're going to pay tribute to Chris and Kevin, as you said, 25 years on. But it's so good that the club, keep it alive, don't you? And it only seems like it's getting stronger, the tribute to Chris and Kev, as the years go on. It only seems to get better and better, doesn't it, with the club? So it's really, really nice after 25 years that we are still paying tribute to that tragic night in Istanbul. And we spoke to Ian Hart a couple of weeks ago as well, and he obviously touched on that night as well and what it felt like being a player. And he spoke about, he probably looked back at that as probably his biggest regret in football, that he shouldn't have played that match that night, that he should have refused to play.
Absolutely. I mean, all I can see is the team coming out looking absolutely petrified, but they should never ever have played it. And the fact that the Leeds fans stood and turned their backs to the pitch, that's something they've carried on ever since, because it shouldn't have been played. And we should have just walked away. And I know it would have been hard, but sometimes football, I think, just really needed to take a second spot that time, because it was worst thing ever. And the European Vodsu made us play it, which is
Horrendous.
That's just typical of them, to be honest. If it were anybody else, they might have thought different, but it's like, oh, it's Leeds United, it don't matter.
Yeah, horrendous, like what you're saying. Yeah, well, at least we still remember Chris and Kevin in a really, really good light. Then we'll move on then a little bit then, Heidi. So we go a couple of years down under O'Leary, and then our worst fair happened, and this kind of brings me into my time supporting Leeds. Is in 2003, 2004. I got a year of Leeds United in the Premier League. Then our worst fears happened. Risdale kind of gambled with the club. We fall, down to the Championship, down to League One. Administration hits. What was kind of the feeling that time? Did it kind of bring you back to the 80s a little bit, that, you were seeing Leeds United on the way back, the pinnacle of football, and then we're starting to fall again? What was the feeling around that time?
I mean, well, I was convinced that we wouldn't fold altogether, but other people think differently, which is fair enough. And I just wish it hadn't been Bates who came in and sort of rescued us as such, because it always felt that he still didn't like us after the scoreboard getting smashed at Chelsea. And I know other people will think differently, fair enough. But I just didn't think we'd fold. But then when we actually got relegated to League One, I mean, I still call it Division 3. But it was actually a fantastic time to follow us, really, because you were going to new grounds, and it was just a really carefree time. But yes, obviously, once it got past the first 2 seasons and you were still down there, it was, oh, will we ever get out of here? And obviously we nearly threw it away with that Bristol Rovers game. I think that was getting out of that division, wasn't it? And then euphoric when it went our way in the end, But it's like all these playoffs, we never turned up. And League Cup again that was with Howard Wilkinson, wasn't it, when we didn't turn up down there? And it's just like, here we go again, So you can't get your hopes up thinking we're going to do something. But then, obviously, the things really changed for me when Bielsa came, and that was just a fantastic time to follow Leeds again, as far as I'm concerned. He brought the good times back to Leeds, and he made me fall back in love with football, because realistically, you were going to games, you could see we'd never ever score a goal. You knew we were never going to win anything, and there was never any hope of that. You're just going along, and it's just for the people. The football was irrelevant, and lack of football got in the way of a good day out with everybody, and that's what it was all about. Football was second. You didn't even
Yeah.
entertain it, because you're just going through duty and meeting up with everybody. But then that with Bielsa, it was really on our wavelength. He understood what we did as fans, and it was just a fantastic, fantastic person. And the fact that they did the dirty on him to this day, I think it's the worst thing they could have ever done. Absolute disgraceful, because we were down to bare bones with our team, and I just knew when people were coming back from injury, we were going to be fine. And yes, we'd already had some hammerings that week, but nobody could have stood with Manchester City at that time.
Yeah.
I thought it's what it is. We're miles away from stuff like that, but I knew we would hold our own once he came back, and I was convinced we would never have got relegated anyway under him. But we'll never know. And we were building, and it's the fact they destroyed all what we were building for in a year. Realistically, they threw it all away, and that was just terrible, because
I
we were
agree with
building
you.
again. And I said, if he could emulate Don Revie at all by doing anything like what he did, that's what I was hoping was going to do. And
Yeah.
obviously, he didn't get the chance in the end, and you've got to live by that. And that's where we are. So
Yeah, it was. It was upsetting at that time, and I remember when I eventually heard about Bielsa sacking, and it was the first time I ever cried over a manager leaving a football club, and it still does. I think it still gets a lot of Leeds fans today, because, like what you said, Heidi, he brought me a new kind of dimension of football. I found myself watching under 21 games, under 18 games. I
yeah,
really found myself delving into football, and like what you said, I always loved Leeds United, but finding another level of love was just unbelievable, and that's all. It's all kind of thanks to Bielsa. But I agree exactly what you say there, that I think if you actually had been given the time and we just stuck with Bielsa, I would have rather, and it's kind of my saying to this day, I would have rather go down with Bielsa than stay up with anybody else, because he was the one that got us there, and it was, he would have done absolutely everything in his power to keep Leeds United in the division, wouldn't he have?
well, the thing is, it's like I always remember Ferguson was ready to get the sack over there, and they stuck with him. And then obviously, once he got Cantona, that was the final piece of the jigsaw. But
Yeah.
Things were never going to happen overnight. That's the thing. You're never going to have the instant success. We were building for it, and and getting rid of players too early who still wanted to play for you, like your Pablo, your Berardi, and what's the other one? Alioski. They still
Yeah.
wanted to stay, and they could have done such a job, but it was all down to finances again and everything else. But I really think the way they handled Bielsa being sacked was terrible, because the rumours came out as soon as that Tottenham game was over. We'd heard they already knew before that Tottenham game
Yeah.
started that it were being sacked. So is there any wonder they got hammered
It's
that
something.
day?
Yeah.
And it was next day before the statement came out. I mean, that was absolutely disgraceful. He didn't deserve that at
No.
all.
He deserved to
So,
go, I think, on his own merit. And we spoke to Stuart Dallas as well. We went to a Q&A with him, and he said before that game he was in getting a bit of strapping done before the game, and the coaching staff, one of Bielsa's coaching staff, came up and shook Dallas's hand, and he said he wanted to thank him very much for all his commitment, and Stuart was kind of a little bit taken back, like, kind of, where's this coming from? And then news kind of started filtering through before they even went out on their warm-up that this was his last game today. So they tried to give their best from, but because obviously the news that were broken, they just couldn't. They couldn't do it today on the pitch, and it's sad. And like what you said, he could have handled it definitely a lot better. But I think that was probably the ownership at that time, Heidi, wasn't it? We were
oh,
a Premier League
it's the
club,
fact
probably
that,
ran like a League One club, really.
to be honest, before Christmas, and that's where they'd already tapped up Marsh back then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He already knew it was coming, so they'd already made their decision then, and they should have got rid of Orta back then and carried on with Bielsa, as far as I'm concerned. But
I agree.
But it's the fact that threw everything away within a year of what we've been building. Why? So we've ended up having to start again. And of course, obviously, we had playoffs last year, and I thought, surely our time's going to come. It's got to change. One day is our luck. But of course, it didn't happen again. So, if anything, you've got to go up automatically. I do not want any playoffs. But again, you just don't know what's going to happen. And I will never, ever prejudge anything. I won't say we're definitely going to do anything until it's categorically iron cast that we are going up automatically. That's the only time I'll believe it. But we don't want any extra expense. It costs us enough as it is. Just please, if we're going to go up, just do it automatically. Take all the stress out from us all. But again, who knows what's going to happen.
Yeah, I agree. I'm like that as well. It's like the leads in your heart is telling you, yeah, we're going to do it, but the lead side of it, and like with the numerous cup finals we've lost, Wembley as well, it's always in the back of your head that where's it going to happen, and it kind of feels like every Leeds fan's thinking the same. Yeah, we're going to do it, but yeah, we might do a Leeds on it. So it's going to be an interesting couple of weeks. 6 weeks left to go. But how do you see the current Leeds United team under Daniel Farke? Do you think we're eventually kind of starting to go back in that right direction? The ownership as well that we have under the 49ers. There's obviously thoughts and we're speaking about stadium expansions as well of Ellandroad. What's your kind of your thought of the club at the minute?
It feels at times like we're a stronger team. It feels like we can withstand a lot more pressure, but then it's not always so clear cut.
Yeah.
And you have your ups and downs still. But like I say, I only make my judgment by what I see on the pitch, and sometimes you can see that it's not going to work. And you need to change things earlier. That's one thing about Farke. He will stand by his late substitutions and everything else. And sometimes you've seen we should have done things earlier, but obviously he's got to sort of live by it himself and make those decisions. It's worked many a time, but not always, as we know. But it does feel as if we could do it. But again, it's that, are we going to just throw it all away again at the last minute and put us under that playoff thing? And everybody's going to be under pressure. But it's up to us to just keep getting as many points as we can, go out there. And I think the thing is, if we go out to defend deep, that's the worst thing we can do, because it invites the opposition to come and attack us from the word go. We need to sort of go at them. But I mean, at Portsmouth, you could see we were just playing too deep. But yet, when I saw the highlights afterwards, we had quite a lot of chances, but it didn't feel like it during the game. You just could see it wasn't working. It's just that you just get those feelings. You just know it don't matter what you do, you're not going to score.
We said the same thing, Heidi, as well that day, and I think you kind of know as Leeds fans, don't you? Like that first 5-10 minutes, you know when we're on it, and you know when we're not. You know exactly what's happening. And we said ourselves, we went to watch it in Dublin with fellow Leeds fans as well, and we said it to ourselves 5 minutes into the game, we're just not on it today. We just weren't on it. And like what you said, it's only when you watch it back, we did have a couple of chances, but it just didn't really feel like we kind of imposed our game on Portsmouth. It just felt like from the word go it wasn't going to be our day, and QPR kind of felt the same as well. But I look at QPR a little bit bright-eyed that was a game that we probably notoriously would have lost, where we'd crumbled on it. But this team have that kind of never say die attitude. We come back, we pick up a point, even though when it's kind of the cards are stacked against us. So I take a little bit of comfort in knowing that team do have that little bit of grit in them that we're never down. We've seen it against Sunderland, we've seen it against Sheffield United, even though performances weren't what we wanted them to be, that we still do have that never say die attitude, that we can still come back.
That's the difference, because like I say, when we were down at doldrums and stuff, you knew it didn't matter what we do, we wouldn't even have a shot on goal. That's how bad things were. So at least scoring goals again, and I've said we don't need to walk everything in the net, take them by surprise and shoot from outside area, which we've done a few times. I mean, James did a fantastic one bit ago, straight into top corner. And it's great when you have those euphoric moments, unexpected, that you don't see it coming. And it's good to see them and be part of it. And, them last minute goals, obviously, I even even I were dancing and singing because I take, because I do my blog and I take photos of fans, and it does actually keep me on that even keel, so I don't get too carried away, just trying to get the photos. But I couldn't even keep on my feet a few times; it was that bad. But I won't grumbling, because getting the goal was the most important thing. I think
Yeah.
it were those late ones. Sheffield United won it when we got
Yeah.
those. I mean, that was just a fantastic ending, because I don't think any of us expected that
No.
game to be like that.
No, I
But
didn't.
and it took us all by surprise. But I'll certainly take those times and the enjoyment, the singing, and because that's what I want it to be like.
Yeah.
I want it to be like that all the time. But I do feel, inadvertently, Leeds have really desecrated the atmosphere at Ellandroad. They've not done it deliberately, but I think by changing the way they were selling the tickets, when we used
Yeah.
to get 4 tickets for everybody, you could get tickets for people together. Now you've sort of got a ticket here, a ticket there, and I do think it's affected it very much.
Yeah.
Yes, I know we can still put it together when we really try, but it's not like it was. And like I say, I don't think they deliberately did it, but it certainly affected everything as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, I agree with you, Heidi, 100%. And I remember my days going back over to the League One, and the atmosphere in League Ones, even though we probably only had 17, 18,000 at some of the games, the atmosphere at Ellen Road used to be absolutely electric. And they were the days when my dad used to bring us over. We didn't even have tickets prior to the game. We used to go to the West End ticket office, buy our tickets there and then, and go to the games, and it was great. So I do agree with you. I think Bielsa brought a good bit of the atmosphere back, but
Oh,
I think
yeah.
now the whole ticketing system, having to be a member or a season ticket holder to go to the game, and like what you said, football's all about going to the game with your mates, isn't it? So to be able to buy, 4, 5, 6 tickets together, and I know they're trying to be diverse and everyone's going to get a chance to go to the game, but it is about going together as a group, isn't it? If you've got,
Yeah.
a group of friends around you, you can kind of get a chant going, which kind of passes on through the ground, doesn't it? So I agree with you as well at times, and it feels like with Ellen Road, and you'll know a lot more, Heidi, it feels like the fans kind of wait now for something to happen in the game to get us going, where it used to be the other way around, and it used to
Yeah.
be the fans got the team going.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, really, I think Pontus Jansson at the time as well was the one who got the fans and the team back together again,
Yeah.
because he'd come in front of the cop and got everybody going, and that was when we started building up the atmosphere and everything again, and it actually bonded us with the team, because it was them and us, and
Yeah.
we're never better than when we're all on that same wavelength, with the club, the team, the fans, all heading in the right direction, same direction, should I say.
Yeah.
And then we're never stronger than when we're all like that. So, if we can get that togetherness back, it does make such a difference to the team, and it does make such a difference to everything else, I think.
Yeah, I agree with you, Heidi, 100%. We all need to stick together and push in the right direction. I'm going to pass over to Dylan now, Heidi. Here's a couple of questions that he wants to ask you, and very interesting to hear the answer to some of this.
Yeah, Heidi, absolutely love listening to you there. I thought, the detail you were going into from the past, I just want to say that was phenomenal.
Phenomenal.
So firstly, I just want to ask, who is the best player you've ever seen in a Leeds United shirt?
Billy Bremner. He always gave 110% as far as I was concerned. That never say die attitude, but he also taught me the love and loyalty of following my team, and that's really, I think, where a lot of my determination comes from, because he never gave up, so I never give up. And if I don't succeed at something to begin with, I can't rest until I sort of get to that end goal. It doesn't always happen, but it's just something that he taught me a lot about being the Leeds fan I am, and it's because of him and that team back then that I'm the supporter I am still today, and that's why we've got the support we had from back then that are still the support today, bringing their own family through. So yes,
Love that. Absolutely love that. If you had to pick a favourite season throughout the whole time you've supported Leeds, which would it be and why?
I would say probably when we won the league in '74. I'm just trying to think, was our unbeaten run in '73 to '74?
Yeah, I think it was. I think so.
We had a 29 match unbeaten run. My scarf stayed unwashed because Don Revie made us superstitious, and it was only got washed after we got beat at Stoke. But it was a case of, you know, we did, again, we played some fantastic football, and to see us get that final goal was just fantastic. And, you know, especially after the disappointments of the season before. And it was probably my favourite one, seeing us crowned First Division champions. And obviously we went down to QPR for that last game of the season. So, you know, I did that reverse psychology last week, because I said to him, I says, just remember, we have won at this ground because we won the championship there. And people say, yeah, but we'd already won it before that. So the final game of the season, and we were crowned champions that day. So it was the final game where we won the league. So
Love that.
That's brilliant. So this season, who would you say is a standout player for you? Someone that's kind of caught your eye, or even?
I really like Dan James. I think he tries so hard, and after everything that sort of went on with him,
Yeah.
it's just a shame he had to go across the Pennines and then come back here and pay so much more for him, really. But you know, I think he's such a lovely person, and I think he's done really, really well. And you know, there's a few other standouts, I'd say, you know, but I just think he's really nice. So
Yeah.
I actually have to agree with you. I'm a Pirro lover, as you can see above my head here, but Dan James is definitely in the top two, you could say, for me anyway. Thoughts on the new owners, Heidi? Considering, you know, every owner that we've previously had, from Bates to Radrizzani to everyone, how do you feel they're doing, and have you got high hopes for them?
I'm still a bit uncertain about being sort of venture capitalists, as they call it, into investment groups. That's always a bit of a concern of mine, because, you know, I think last year a lot of people dropped out, and you don't know how that's going to affect us long term. At the moment, with all this talk about Rangers, what does that mean for us? I don't really know. So there's a few uncertain things. Yes, you know, on the whole, we've stabilised and we've started progressing and everything else, but I can never be 100% certain of anybody, because I'll always keep my eyes and ears open, if you know what I mean, because you don't know what's going on behind the scenes altogether. And it's because, like I say, we don't know. It's all this talk of Rangers. Well, what's going to happen to us? Is it
Yeah.
another group, or is it? You just don't know how it's going to, if it's going to affect us. You know, I'm assuming they're still staying here, but are they? You know,
Yeah.
you can't be certain. But obviously, what will happen will happen. We've no control over it. We'll still support our team, but I'll always keep my eyes and ears open. I think, you know, like I say, I've no control over it. I've no problems with people, but it's just whatever it means in the long run for Leeds. You just don't know, because obviously we've got Angus Kinnear going now. We don't know what's going on in the background. So there's obviously new people coming in, but we don't know who. If there's other investment groups coming in, we don't know what the future holds at the minute. Obviously, again, is it what happens if we go up? What happens if we stay down?
Yeah.
It can put a lot of different aspects on where we go in the future. But, you know, all we can do as fans is watch and see what happens, but be there to support them through the thick and thin.
Couldn't have said it better myself now, if I'm being honest. Thoughts on Daniel Farke, and would you say he's the man to continue the Leeds run if we were in the Premier League?
I think you've got to give him the chance. You know, it's like anything. I've no idea about any other managers or anything else. I just concentrate on Leeds. Obviously, we knew he'd been at Norwich beforehand, and yeah, he'd got them up a couple of times. So I know they got relegated as well, but I think I think whoever you've got, it's going to be very, very difficult going up into that division unless you can hold your own. I mean, under Bielsa, there were no problem of even thinking that we could challenge for Europe or anything
Yeah.
back in that day. I'd no qualms that that could happen. At the moment, obviously, you don't know. I think you still need to strengthen your team, but you've just got to hope that it can get us up there, and it's got to be given the chance to stay, you know, to keep us there. Because at the end of the day, the last thing I want to do is go out and pay silly money for people. We did it when we went up under Radrizzani. He started paying silly money out, silly contracts and everything else.
Yeah.
And all we've done is put us back in that financial position that we had under Ridsdale, really. And at least under there, you know, at least back then, he did actually like the fans, where I think Bates, obviously, he didn't like us.
We didn't like him either.
And Tolino, I think he was just, yeah. Again, we've had all sorts, haven't we?
Yeah, we really
But,
have.
you know, at the end of the day, we stay supporting his team, and it's not always been easy. I know people they've gone away because of things going on in the management side. But at the moment, I suppose we're probably as stable as we've been. How we are financially, if we don't go up, or I have heard we've got still a lot of money. Who knows? It's a lot of unknowns still at the minute. So I think all we can do is wait and see if we go up and deal with it whichever way it is. You know, you can only deal with what's in front of you, I think. And at the moment, there's a lot of unknowns again, because you don't know whether we're going to manage it or not, really. And yes, it's all right being blasé, saying, of course, we're going up, but I've seen it too many times, so I will never, ever take it for granted. You can't. And
Yeah.
like I say, once we know for certain, one way or the other, that's when I'll relax and enjoy it.
Love that. That it, Dylan?
That's it.
Brilliant, Heidi. Again, I think myself and Dylan could listen to you all night. It's absolutely brilliant, the detail that you go into and everything that you've been through being a Leeds United fan. I think you just epitomise everything, what it is and what it means to be a Leeds United fan. And I think I probably speak part to myself, Dylan, and all the Leeds fan base. Amazing woman. Love listening to your stuff, the books, and even the other bits and bobs you do. Love listening to you. Really appreciate you giving up your time tonight and come and speak to us. It's been absolutely brilliant.
Well, thanks for asking me. It's like anything. I mean, I know I go off on a tangent and talk about this and that, but you know, it's what it is.
Brilliant. Thanks very much, Heidi. I think we'll leave it there. And don't forget to slap a like on the video, hit subscribe to the channel, and we'll chat you all again soon. Mind yourselves and mind each other.